We begin in Cuba, where U.S. President Barack Obama is making his historic visit. Upon arrival, the American president was greeted by Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez. But notably, Cuban President Raul Castro was not in attendance. Mr. Obama is the first U.S. president to visit the island nation since 1928. It is a watershed moment for the warming of relations between the former Cold War foes. We turn now to Sean Callebs, who is live for us in Havana. Sean, nice to see you. A very poignant day indeed.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you use the term watershed because history is actually being greeted by a spring thunderstorm here in Havana. It happened just before President Obama and his family arrived here. For the most part today, the president is playing tourist. He's visiting sites here in Old Havana, visiting the diplomatic staff of the U.S. Embassy, which recently reinstituted relations, of course, with Cuba. Now, tomorrow is when the action really begins, the political work really begins for the president. He's going to lay a wreath at a memorial for Cuban national hero Jose Marti, then bilateral discussions with Cuban President Raul Castro, then very important business meetings with members of the Small Business Administration from the United States, American business leaders, as well as Cuban entrepreneurs. After that, the next day on Tuesday, what the White House considers perhaps the most important event, it is when Obama will hold a televised news conference, a chance for him, he says, to speak directly to the Cuban people. Finally, before the president leaves Havana, a little fun, a little social activity. He's going to be going to a baseball game at Estadio Latino Americano, where the Tampa Bay Rays are going to play the Cuban national team. Now, as Susan mentioned, this is the first time in nearly 90 years that a sitting U.S. president has visited Cuba. A lot has been made about that, but until now, it is an event that had been largely lost in history.
Havana is changing quickly. The millions in the tiny island nation's capital are embracing the brave new world and the opportunities it brings. But venture an hour and a half outside of Havana to the small farming community of Alquizar. Here, farmers like 45-year-old Eva Ribeiro say dramatic reforms are something they hear about, but so far haven't really seen.
More than thinking about what this relationship can bring, I am waiting to see what might result from this, what benefits come from this relationship.
Ribeiro's tractor is as old as he is, but he says it still does the job. So the news about a new U.S. tractor factory to be built in Cuba that would provide expensive new equipment right now means little to a man that has been able to feed his family with his reliable old workhorse, the rich soil, and a solid government contract.
This is one of the most productive regions in the country. The soil is capable of growing any kind of crop you can plant.
Ribeiro grows bananas, guava, coffee beans, citrus fruits, constantly rotating crops to protect his greatest asset, Cuba's fertile land.
The fruit will spring from the very last leaves.
Ribeiro grows the crops, and the government sells them and pays him. Life is slow in the heart of the tiny town. Here, bicycles and vintage U.S. cars are still the primary mode of transportation. There's no hustle and bustle here. But city leaders like Yamila Alvarez Estevez say that doesn't mean they wouldn't welcome progress.
I think that relations could improve and that they march on a good path because we are humble people, sociable, with solidarity.
Over the last 2 years, Alejandro Ramos has benefited from the new Cuba. He pays about $18 US a month to rent this store in Alquizar to sell fruits and vegetables. Ramos is among the growing breed of self-employed workers in the country excited about normalizing relations with the United States.
This is something we have been waiting for many years, and we are advancing in many ways.
I think any normal relations should have a positive effect for every aspect regarding development in the country.
Ribeiro's 11-year-old son, Ernesto, may literally follow in his father's footsteps, but there's no guarantee he will want to follow him into the business world. Reforms are opening a new world here, one that could make Cuba dramatically different by the time Ernesto is ready to enter the workforce.
Beautiful photos, Sean. Sean, President Obama clearly trying to make normalizing relations with Cuba part of his legacy, but there are still hurdles. The only way to officially end the embargo is by an act of the United States Congress, obviously. But how likely is that?
Yeah, Susan, that is the real sticking point. And the Republican-controlled U.S. Congress has made it clear that it is not going to pass any legislation to lift the long economic embargo, punishing this island nation for close to 50 some years now. But interestingly enough, there are dozens of congressional members, who are going to be accompanying the president down here for this 3-day trip. They're going to get a chance to see the island, see how the people live, see how excited they are about the possibility of reforms, economic reforms, and of course, renew ties with the United States. President Obama has been using his executive decisions. He has made a series of 5 so far. There is 1 more remaining before he leaves office. And the administration has said that they're doing this because they want to make normalizing relations between the United States and Cuba irreversible. They go so far down the road that Congress is either going to be forced to act or they're going to have enough of these decisions on the board to be able to dramatically change the way the United States and Cuba deal with each other.